You can look at things openly. When you say you want to look at things openly, it makes me think that you're in a buffet. You don't really know what you want, but it's a whorehouse of food, and you allow your taste buds to just be exposed to whatever. And if you don't like something, you throw it away. If you like something, you just eat a little bit because there's more to have. No, you're in no position to assess anything. You don't have a canon. You don't have a measuring stick. You don't have a tape measure. Your comparing and contrasting tools are only about 10 years old. You have no expertise in knowing what's good for you or what's bad for you. Look at the people. We started this class with 40 people. How many times do I have to tell people, stay in school, not because you like me, not because school is interesting. School sucks, I know that. You need to graduate. You need to get yourself to a 4-year school. You need to go to an Ivy League school, a big school, so you can put that on your resume. And when you apply for positions, go for work, when people look and see that you've graduated from Stanford or Berkeley or Oxford, they'll just give you a job. This you don't know because you're only an 18-year-old punk. Is it fair that you leave this class having forgotten everything we talk about? No. The only fairness that can exist is for me to present ideas in a way and to be in a way where I remain unforgettable. I have a product to sell, man. You're not yet a customer. I have to make you into a customer. Customer. Now, what does it mean to be a customer? Let's say you're hungry and you pass by In-N-Out. Well, that's a piece of advertisement. When you're hungry, you're poor, right? You're not looking for Jesus Christ. You're not looking for a therapist. You're not looking to buy a car. You're poor for food in your belly. Okay? So remember, we have different kinds of poverty. And when you're poor, what happens? Well, you want to satisfy it. In other words, you want to get rid of it. How do you get rid of poverty? If he is having an argument with his wife and she's not getting it, or he's not getting it, what are they suffering from? Poverty. To remove any kind of poverty, what do you need? You need resources. What does that mean? You need money. You need a map. What directions, what do I need to do to feed my belly? That's a question, that's a map. Okay, and the answer is money. So you put your hand in your pocket. Why? You're going to see if you have the resources to feed your belly. Now, you may put your hand in your pocket and you may realize that you only have $1. You say, well, I need at least $8 to buy a number 2. Cheeseburger, medium Coke, and French fries. And if you're lucky, maybe a milkshake as well. Okay? You say, well, I can barely move because I'm starving. So you look out there. And there are people coming and going. And you become very, very political. Who's looking soft? Who's smiling? Who's walking with their kids? And then you use your intuition. And you go to the person and say, listen, I only get $1. Can I give this to you so you can buy me like a number 2? That's all I just need a number 2. I don't want your money. Just can you buy me some food? So the point you need to understand is all of you in this class are poor. You want to graduate, that's poverty. Maybe your parents don't make enough money. You want to go to school, finish school so you can get a job and help out. That's poverty. But I'm not interested in those poverties. I need to make you poor in asking specific types of questions. You know why when someone, for example, asks me about forgiveness or abandonment or anger, I try to make it universal. I don't talk about your kind of abandonment or anger. I'm just telling you how abandonment or forgiveness or anger works. And if you can understand its mechanism, then you can understand everything about anger at any time it happens to whoever. You know, so for you to be able to ask questions that I enjoy, you first need to become a customer. Now the question is, how do I turn you into a customer? Not just to come to this class and ask any question, ask specific questions. Before you're able to ask specific questions that I like, I have to contaminate you with certain emotions. Emotions you won't understand. Emotions that are going to be profoundly confusing. I have to make you poor in the way that I see fit. But this is not going to be fair for me. You know why? Because you're going to put up a fight. And you're going to also shove your culture in my face. I'm an American. I have rights. You're invading my privacy. And then you're going to, if you happen to be a really ridiculous and infantile, you're going to say, I'm going to go and complain about you. That's what the system is all about, man. What Judge Judy? You know, kids sue parents, parents sue parents, grandparents sue kids. It's just a ridiculous scenario. You know? Now, do you have any other questions before we move on? Alex, just kidding.
How do you deal with authority? Like, disagree with it or not?
Well, it depends on what kind of authority figure you're talking about. If you're talking about the authority of your parents over you, the truth is, you know, parents worry. They worry about the kids you hang out with. They worry about the movies you watch. They worry about the books you read. They worry about the way you dress. They worry about how often you shower. They worry about everything about you. And they're going to do their best, if they happen to be relatively aware of themselves, of their family environment, of society, and they're going to do whatever to sway you, dissuade you, persuade you, okay, to do things that they think would be good for you. If you go to your mom and say, Mom, I'm going to quit school, there's a good chance she's going to, I mean, depending on the mom, of course. She may slap you, she may kick you, she may hit your skull with a skillet. I don't really know what she's going to do. And you may say, well, that's cruel. Well, it's cruel in your perspective, true. And maybe she should approach you in a different way. But the truth is, she's worried about your future, man. She sees tents all over the highway, on the street everywhere. And when you say, I'm going to drop out of school, you know what she's going to see? Imagine you in a tent somewhere. That's one authority figure, okay? And then you have another authority figure, like you work at Home Depot, you have a boss. And what are you going to do? You need a job, you need to pay rent, you need to pay for gas, you need to pay for food. You have to suck it up. That's another authority figure. Then there is this other authority figure. And remember, when you get into a relationship, one day you're the authority figure, the next day he or she is the authority figure. So there's this yo-yo syndrome. One day it's you on the top, next day it's her on the top. So that's going to happen for the rest of your life. And after, when you get to be 25, God forbid you have a child, you're no longer the authority of anything. The child is sitting on top of you and you're like a donkey. He or she will tell you where to go, when to go, how to go. All right? Now, there is this other authority figure. In Buddhism, they're called the stick of compassion. The stick of compassion is the following. You have about 12 or 24 monks sitting in a tiny little room, and they have to sit without making any movements, physical mental or emotional. Very, very difficult. In other words, when you're a monk in any of these traditions, that your task is stop being human. Don't yawn. Don't think and don't feel. Be empty. And it's something you got to do for the next 20, 30, 40 years to kind of become really good at. And there is a guy, the authority figure, okay, who walks up and down the room, and the moment he sees any movement on your part, taps you on the shoulder with this stick, this bamboo, and that tapping reminds you that you've messed up. You open your eyes, you bow, and then you sit up straight, and he hits you really hard, 3 times on this shoulder, 3 times on this shoulder. And you're not going to complain. You're going to bow, you're going to kiss the stick, say a thank you, go back to your position. Now, why is that particular authority figure good? For those of you in this class who may one day run into our football coach, John Beam, I don't know him too well, but I have heard lots of great things about him. That first, he cares for the game, he cares for his people, for the players, and if they're really, really good, he has a lot of connections. He calls them and says to them, come take a look at this kid, he's really, really good. And all of a sudden they get picked up by 49ers. Okay? Now what he does, he's really, really tough on the kids. Really, really tough. Now that is an authority figure worth having. Why? First, he makes you into a great football player. He forces you to overcome laziness. You have to examine and re-examine the way you run the ball. And when you're tired, he's going to ask you for superhuman effort. That's not what your parents do. That's not what your boss does. But if you have a coach who's in the business of improving your game, that's a great authority figure to have. The only problem is this. Really, really good authority figures, for the most part, are very abusive. Because they see inside you things that you can't see, and they have to pull it out. And you're not going to let them pull it out easily. If, for example, someone was to tell me, I lost my faith and trust and ability to love at the age of 2, how can I get it back? If I liked them, I'm not talking about now, maybe 20 years ago, if I really, really liked them, if I was attracted to their emotions, if I was attracted to the way they speak, I would invite them to the house every single day. And I would abuse the hell out of them. Clean my house, clean my backyard, wash the dishes. Let's have dinner, let's have conversation in the back room. And what would happen? They would grow to like me more and more and more and more. And without them knowing, things about them are being rewired. But that usually takes about 10, 15 years. But you have to be a good customer. See, usually what happens is when you go to a therapist, you eventually become very attracted to your therapist. What the therapist really wants to do is that if they happen to be good at what they do, what the therapist wants to do is they want to get through all the garbage that lives inside you until you get to this place where you can kind of examine things on your own. And when he or she comes to realize that you can actually think well about the stuff, you're mindful, you're aware, he looks at you and says, I don't think you need to come here anymore. The therapist inside you is now born and fully functional. Go away. I don't need your money and I don't need you anymore. And you say, but I like you. That may be so, but that really wasn't our deal. Our deal was for you to say your nonsense to me, and I heard you. I've been listening to you for the past 2 years. Now you know how to think about this stuff on your own. Save your money so you can buy a house. And you say, but I love you. I don't want to walk away from you. Listen, I did what I could. You're now a therapist unto yourself. Go. And that's the next part that becomes very difficult. First, the training. Then you become very attached to your trainer. Then the trainer had to cut the ties so you can stand on your own feet and begin to live life. I'm sorry, I forgot your question, but it matters very little. What was it? Oh, yeah, that's right. Let me tell you another story about authority. Long time ago, my brother, when he finished school, his first job, I think it was his first job, he worked at this place called TreeNet in Sacramento. And at the same time, they hired this guy. His name was Willie. And apparently he was the bodyguard for the president of China. One of them. And he says, my brother Iraj would tell me, sometimes we would have meetings and our boss or manager would say something and Willie would stand up and say, you're just wrong. Who made you the boss? I mean, you suck as a manager. You don't know what you're talking about. You're uneducated. And he would say things in such a way that nobody in the room could speak. Now remember, he's just a regular guy working for a regular company as a boss over him. He doesn't really care. Then he gets a job at the university, Sacramento State. And he's the same way. A few years ago, of course, he was arrested because he was a spy. But the point I'm trying to make is the following. When you have a great amount of power inside you, and when your power comes from a good place, you are more than willing and capable of standing up to any authority figure. Don't ever stand up to your parents because their intention is very, very different. When your mom slaps you and say, why did you plagiarize and get enough on this essay? Don't scream back. Just say, Mom, I suck as a human being. Don't ever raise your voice. If you have a boss at Home Depot or at Target who's just a jerk, okay, and you have already rent money, you have a good savings account, your parents will always house you just in case something about your life goes bad. If you think it's time to stand up, stand up. If on the other hand, you're poor, you don't have good parents, you don't have good savings, you got nothing, and this is the only job and it pays for everything, you're a slave. There is nothing you can do. There is something that will help you. Of course, for those of us in this class who are in a rough place in life where we don't really have very much power to overcome authority figures who are mean-spirited, become a really, really good stoic. And by stoicism, I mean the following. You can't change me, Alex. I'm an old dog. I can make very, very, very minor adjustments. But for the most part, I'm a concrete that has been hardened. I'm not going to change. Learn how to tolerate me. And for that to happen, you got to go to what he says. You got to be open-minded, which means what? There is a tradition that comes out of India called Jainism. And they say if you want to have the right assessment about any event in life, make sure you have access to 365 perspectives. Let me tell you what that means. If I show you this cup and ask you to sketch this cup for me, What you're going to do is every single one of you have access to a certain part of this cup. Not the whole cup, just only a certain part of this cup. So you're only going to sketch what you see. And then you're going to assume that what you see is the complete picture. The Jains say, no, that's actually not true. You have access only a tiny little part of a picture that's very, very complicated. You may sketch. What you don't see is that inside this cup is red. The lip part is white. It has a handle like this. Look at the bottom. And so Jains argue that whenever you and I make judgments about anything, it's always incomplete because we don't have access to the full picture. You want to call me a jerk? Fine. Do you know what happens when people turn 60? They don't have the patience as much. You know, if you've seen that movie, The Incredibles, you know the wife, what's her name? Elastigirl? When you get older, you're not as elastic. You just can't be elastic, man. You break. That's what happens. Okay? And then you say, well, yeah, you know, he's a jerk. It's because he is old. And when people get old, they begin to lose the ability to be patient. Patient for nonsense. And then you say, Alex, you're also 18. What the hell do you know about anything? So don't put all of this on me. Put a little bit on yourself. And all of a sudden you realize you're really no longer thinking about me being a jerk. You have access to perspectives that are now forcing you to forget me altogether. Now you're beginning to examine things you never examined before. So Stoicism is about the only power you have. How the hell do you want to govern yourself? How do you want to react to emotions, to the events that come to you from life? But remember, to be able to do any of this stuff in a relatively healthy and mature way, you need resources. Read lots of books. Think lots of thoughts. Be alone. Reflect. Be quiet. It's okay if you're intimate with pain caused by reflection. Bleed a little. It's okay. Let your reflection cause you a lot of pain. And if you do this the right way in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you'll make it. Anyone else? Kaya? Anything? Actually, I disagree with you. Let me tell you why. Tonight, you'll go to bed around 10:30. And you've had a relatively nice and decent day. Nothing has been too exhausting. So you go to bed and you have a very, very restful sleep. And you wake up at, say, 7 in the morning. Okay? You have your shower, you have your breakfast, and you drive to work. And it's a good day. And you're fresh. You get to work at 8. You're really nice to everybody. Up to 9. Very nice. From 9 to 10, you're nice. From 10 to about 11, you are little nice. At 11, you take your lunch break. Okay? You go back to work at 1. Your belly is full, so you're a little lethargic. All right? And when you're on a break, it's what they call idle time. Let's just say you're not playing with your phone, or maybe you are, I don't know. Because of the idle time, you reflect not so much about this, you reflect about a little nice. Do I really need to go back and be with these people? The answer is, well, you don't really got a choice. Then, at one, you are little mean. At two, you are mean. At three, you are very mean. This is you, Alex. This is your container. This is 8 o'clock. This is 9 o'clock. This is 10 o'clock. This is 11 o'clock. And this is 4 o'clock. This is your garbage bin. Little by little, it gets filled. You don't walk in with frustration. Frustration happens. So when you say, what can I do to hang out with old people? Well, this is your capacity until 10. There is a way you can manipulate your own psyche. And there is a book that was written by Leo Tolstoy called The Death of Ivan Ilyich. I forget the name of this young man. So Ivan Ilyich is a rich guy. He is diagnosed with, let's just say, cancer. And he has a butler, and the butler has a son. And the son every day goes and takes care of this man, cleans him, washes him, feeds him. And one day this old man looks at him and says, "You're 20. Don't you want to go out there, play soccer, watch a good movie with your friends, have coffee?" And this young man says, "No, because one day I will get old, and one day I will get sick. And I hope there is someone like me who's going to take care of me when I get old and sick." And that's a great, great lesson for all of us. If you're at a place where you can kind of summon up these stories, inject them in your head, and once you have this information in your head, if you have the proper relationship with this information, it'll generate emotions. So next time you see an old person, you don't see an old person. What you see is your own future. And then you will train your frustration. You push them down. And you're not going to be like Sigmund Freud, where you push them down so you can go home and explode. You push them down because you understand. And there are times you simply need to walk away. Because the thing you need to understand about, see, this is anger, right? What usually happens, you start the day with comfort. Then you get frustrated. Then you get anxious. These are all poverties that you begin to suffer from. Frustration and anxiety. Because why? You lose power to control your environment. And now you got to cope. That creates a different set of frustrations and angers. Okay? And anxieties. There comes a point where your coping mechanism just shuts down. All you have is just anger. Now, thank God you've been socialized well, where the anger doesn't get expressed violently. So frustration is a very natural, emotion that all of us in this class have. Wherever you go, it doesn't really matter. People will get frustrated because that's what life is. It removes power from you. Now, if you have the power to only work from 9 to 11, it means that for 3 hours, you're just going to be nice to people. If you don't, old people are going to suffer because of you. And that's how it is. I have a bad night's sleep, I come to class, my mind doesn't work well. Who suffers? You guys do. And that's how it is. Well, This has been a complete waste of time. Do you have any questions or comments before we go our ways?
Class. Sometimes when you mentioned, I think you said about attitude.
Yeah.
So how do you what does that bring you after the class?
You know, when up to about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I would teach about maybe 8 classes, all in person. So after this, I would have another class, I would have a lunch break, and students would come to the office. I wouldn't really have a break. And I would class from 1 to about 2:15, then from 3 to about 5, and then 6 to 9. That was my day. Now I can only do maybe 1 or 2. And the other thing about, I think, the way my classes are, because questions come at me, and it's not something that's been prepared beforehand, I have to figure out how to approach the question. So most of it is really just winging it. But to be able to wing anything well, you have to improvise. And to improvise means you must kind of be able to tap into this arsenal of experience and insight and intuition and connect things in a way that are intimate, harmonious, coherent, and it takes a lot of energy, you know? So at my age, it gets pretty exhausting. You know, I think it's much easier to come to class and say, today we're going to talk about Karl Marx. And it's easy because you've talked about Marx for the past 20 years. You just come, spit out the information, you go home. But when someone, for example, says, can we talk about patience? Well, you have to say, well, at what stage does one need to become patient? Because if you're having a good time, there is no need to be patient. You ask about patience when you're robbed of good time, you're robbed of comfort, And then it becomes exhausting because you have to go to places where other people haven't gone, certainly, and you perhaps haven't gone yourself. So it's like, what is that movie with Harrison Ford? The what? Lost Raiders of the Lost Ark, where, you're like an archaeologist, but instead of looking for statues or sites, you look for emotional components that are buried deep within people and yourself. And it's exhausting, because you have to carry a lot of instruments inside, remove the dust and figure out, well, what does it mean to feel abandoned? What does it feel to be impatient or angry? So it can be exhausting, but it's very, very, very rewarding, And, when you've lived, a life like mine for the past 30, 40, 50 years, you just kind of grow a thick skin, and it's actually quite fun. So when I see you on Thursday, right? Today's Tuesday? We'll talk about other things. Have a nice day, people. Thank you.